All right, Sagar, what's on your radar?
Well, it's been all but a certainty now for days, but yesterday, the final nail in the coffin of a potential stimulus deal before the election was struck, interestingly enough, not by any one party, but by all three on the same day for self-serving political reasons that ultimately doom millions to possibly one of the toughest winters since 1932, at the height of the Great Depression. And the key thing I want you all to take away is how bipartisan of a failure this is, through and through. Let's start with the Democratic side, where a lot of the blame lies with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi, for months, has said that she is absolutely willing to make a deal, but has dragged her feet at every single turn when presented with a good faith offer. This became most clear in the last month after Trump panicked at the prospect of not getting a stimulus bill and basically told Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin to give Pelosi whatever she wanted. They countered with approximately $1.8 trillion, a number that Senate Republicans didn't even support. She turned it down time after time after time. Even after the White House went up to $2 trillion, we saw her quibbling over language that has nothing to do with stimulus payments to American citizens or for unemployment relief to the 30 million currently on the rolls. She pointed to contract tracing. Then she pointed to election monitoring. Then some obscure parts of state and local relief. And then, closer the election day started to come, she made up even more excuses. She came up with her final excuse Monday night on Chris Hayes' show, when she laid out her final objection to the bill. You won't even guess what it is. Let's take a listen.
Public sentiment is everything, the public weighing in. Now, again, this was big with Mark Meadows saying, we didn't intend to control this. So that gave us much more leverage. But the fact is, we have to control the virus. We have to control the virus. But in addition to that, we cannot sell our souls. Just say, okay, well, let's just do it whatever way they want to do it. We'll do it again. No. We've got to crush the virus. We've got to have our children safely in schools. We've got to insist that as people are going into poverty, we are asking for them for earned income tax credit, child tax credit, all these things that take people out of poverty. They're insisting on keeping their big tax cut, $150 billion for the wealthiest people in the country.
So there it is. Pelosi tells Chris Hayes that Democrats could not sell their souls on a coronavirus relief bill over objections on the earned income and child tax credits. Look, I am not saying these things are not important, but give me a freaking break. In the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, that's what we're holding up $2 trillion of substantive relief for tens of millions of people over? It was a cynical play from her from the very beginning. And I hope she can sleep in her multi-million-dollar mansion and eat her expensive ice cream in peace, knowing that she held up relief, possibly until February, all to ensure an already possible Joe Biden victory, less than a week from right now. But of course, Pelosi is not the only other villain in this tale. I haven't even gotten to Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. Trump himself also officially killed the idea of stimulus yesterday before departing for one of his rallies. Let's take a listen.
After the election, we'll get the best stimulus package you've ever seen. Because I think we're going to take back the House because of her. I think you have a lot of congressmen and women, Republicans, that are going to get elected. We'll take back the House.
After the election. And he thinks Republicans are going to take back the House. Unfortunately, that is delusional. It is not going to happen. And even worse, it shows a common theme of his handling of economic stimulus. He wished the pandemic would just go away, and then it didn't. Then he wished for economic recovery, but didn't work that hard to actually get any of it done. Time after time after time, we told you the chief impediment to a deal outside of Pelosi was not even Democrats, but the Senate Republican caucus, and that the only person capable of actually making those people abandon their insane economic ideology was Donald Trump. If he'd actually cared to get anything done, he could have pressed them. Not at the last minute in October, but in May or June or July, and he didn't do that. He talked a big game, but he didn't deliver. And for a lot of people, they're going to remember that on Election Day. And of course, we're going to end with our very last villain, Mitch McConnell, who in many ways is the victor of this story. And so many of us are the losers. McConnell is an economic libertarian, and more critically, he is somebody who values consensus in the Republican Party, no matter whether that consensus is good or bad. He never wanted to spend more than $1 trillion. And after an attempt at that failed earlier in the year, he just said, all right, you know what? I'll do what my caucus wants. And it turns out the median Republican senator not only doesn't want to spend $1 trillion, the highest they're willing to go is $500 billion. So McConnell, the supposedly master politician, just threw up his hands. He said, okay, that's our position. And he poo-pooed any potential deal with Nancy Pelosi from the sidelines. Yesterday, could almost barely contain his nonchalance that it didn't work out when talking to Politico, saying, quote, that was a very complicated negotiation, depending on who you talk to. I'm not sure they ever got very close. That's it. No concerns, no lamentations for people, nothing. That is while the New Yorker describes yesterday how in his home state of Kentucky that so many were thrown out of their homes that lost unemployment money were left wondering if anything would ever come. And the heartbreaking story there tells of a family who slowly loses everything around them in the eastern part of the state, is unable to access public support, and is now left with a half tank of gas that they can't refill. If any money comes in, they'll be able to buy some more gas, transport some furniture, and save themselves some money that they really need. But until then, they are left quite literally in the cold. That brings us to the end of this failure of a story, possibly the most important story ahead of the election. Not one of the three major heads of government acted in good faith or worked hard to get real relief for Americans at a time when they needed it the most. And in our current system, it's just so you're not really architected that you can make all three pay a price. Some will benefit because of this. It's maddening to think about how we've been gaslit into these decisions and how much is on the line for so many. And all I can say here, with 6 days to go, is you should remember how each of these people behaved in this scenario. And you should remember it in the future. And you should work hard to make sure that our system actually works for people who are out there waiting for some help. Because if you and I and others do not do that work, eventually nobody will be around to stand up for them. And I keep thinking about that, Crystal, which is that the Pelosi footage, saying that she killed this because of the earned income. And again, look, I probably agree with her on the earned income tax credit, but it doesn't matter. That's not something that you hold up trillions of dollars in aid. There was a $2 trillion deal with $1,200 stimulus checks and more unemployment, which would have meant the world to millions. And I have met many of them who are like, look, even $100 in unemployment, not even $400, not the original $600, just that $100. I could make my bills. I could go do that. That family I talked about in eastern Kentucky, they could save $95 a month if they could get more gas, but can't afford the gas tank. That's how broke they are. They got nothing. They can't even move. They can't leave their house. They can barely pay their bills. They have no jobs, nothing. And because they all lost. And everybody around them is in the same boat. So what are they supposed to do?
And it says everything that is the state that Mitch McConnell represents. One of the most powerful men in the world.
Right, exactly.
And these individuals are just left out in the cold. I'm really glad you brought up the New Yorker story, which I read yesterday, which was absolutely heartbreaking and representative of what is happening in so many communities for so many families across the country that goes completely unheard and invisible in this town. We've gone over the many list of villains in this story. And, I think Trump being the ultimate one because he was in the position of power and then finally, just ultimately kills it here. And don't believe...
He bears the responsibility.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Yeah. And listen, he wants to say, after the election, we're going to pass. Do you think that's going to happen? No. Do you think that's going to happen? At least the Senate R's right now have a little bit of electoral pressure put on them, especially if he loses. Do you think he's going to be able to rally them? And do you think that he's going to care to rally them? This is his election, that he could most benefit from putting this out there. The only way that I think he ultimately does anything whatsoever that these people could be corralled again is some sort of massive stock market drop, which, look, the futures are down this morning. You never know. That could come. But barring something sort of catastrophic happening that, their rich friends actually care about, there's nothing coming. This was the last chance. Pelosi decided in bad faith she didn't want anything for the election. She didn't want to give Donald Trump anything. The Senate Republicans dug in their heels. Mitch McConnell is ridiculous, and Trump didn't do what it takes. But I also want to highlight one of the quieter failures in this, which is the Progressive Caucus. From the beginning, the Progressive Caucus, the progressives in the Senate. If there was ever a time when the ideas of the left, the progressive left in the party, were most salient, most saleable, the American public is 100% behind a massive stimulus, UBI, jobs programs, health care payments, all of this, the American people are massively behind. And we've seen so little organizing from the left of the Democratic Party, and even less pressure put on leaders like Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. I mean, Pelosi being, of course, the primary one because she's the one who actually runs, the House, obviously. So the fact that they were so quiet and so subservient and so unwilling to buck the negotiation tactics of their leadership is deeply disappointing. And if that's what's going to unfold in the Biden administration, it's going to be absolutely pathetic. I mean, Ro Khanna was the only one
and he had to walk it back.
who said anything,
right.
And I give him a lot of credit for that. It's lonely to be out there. You had him, and you had a few centrist corporatists
yes.
who, were running in swing districts who felt like they needed to get this done for their people, and they're always about working with Republicans anyway. So that was their instinct. But when I questioned Bernie Sanders about this, he didn't have good answers. He's like, look, when we take control of the Senate, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do the other. Great. I hope that you do. But I said, look, do you think that people can wait that long? Can they make it through winter? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, this is the deal that's on the table. It may not be perfect, but this was the only chance to get something done. It's gone.
Well, and you read that Eastern Kentucky story just like I did. You think they've got 4 months? No. They barely have one. And look, the Republicans are there too. Marco's the only one who said he would vote for the $1.8 trillion deal. Literally the only one.
Really?
He's the only single person who said he would do it. So, where was Holly and where was Ruby, where was Cotton and where was Mitt Romney?
Oh, Romney said he was against it.
And that's
where he was.
And where was Rob Portman and where were many of these other people who all represent states which desperately need this money? Roy Blunt of Missouri.
How about Shelley Moore Capito in West Virginia? You don't think her people could use some help right now?
I just saw the Republicans in Missouri being like, you killed us. They're like, we needed this stimulus money. We cannot pay hazard pay to law enforcement and other essential services throughout winter who, if it snows, good luck. Who's going to pay them to go out there and snowplow? This stuff matters, right? You think you can't go out of your house now? What are we going to do when we can't pay basic services?
Yeah.
This is happening all across America. We were resilient. I actually didn't think we would make it this far. It's been, 7-8 months.
Yeah.
But look, the clock, it comes. It's ticking. And more you get through winter. And as longer you don't have more money into the system, no system in the world can go through that. Nothing can withstand this amount of a crunch for so long with no cash. Last time we had real economic stimulus was March. The CARES Act. The last time people got checks was 8 months. $1,200 is a lot of money for a lot of people, but not for that long. And they need it, and it's not coming.
Very depressing.
All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.